In this second session, Julianne offers us a potential way forward, a way to look at church, a way to look at our faith communities. But more importantly, it poses the question, what can I do? What can I do in my own parish? And by extension, what can I then contribute to my family of parishes? At the end of this session, there are some more questions. And these questions are very carefully formulated to think about what we could be doing in the future, what we need to start doing, and what we need to keep doing.
I can't move on without acknowledging some of the comments, particularly, the sense of that this is daunting. Yes, it is. I started with my story about my brother because I've been trying to work on him for 12 years. Sometimes we have these ideas and theories and we think, we could do this and we could do that. And then there's the very real reality of this being our neighbours and our friends. If I wanted to do, if you would bear with me for a moment, I wanted to cast in the first session sort of the big picture, the why, and you know that as well as I do, the who and the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we at this place? I am going to move into that what and how. But I want to respond to something that somebody said, and I can't remember, but it's a very germane point, saying that for some people, church isn't that sanctuary space, it isn't that safe place. Now, in our family of parishes model, my own parish is 100 families. It's small, it's very rural. We're 45 minutes from Green Bay, which is a big city, 150,000. But we recognised we couldn't just get people back to Mass. That wasn't where they were. And we started going out, and I was telling someone about it, and of course they said, that's so American. But we had something called Theology on Tap. We went down to the pub in the town, and we have a speaker series. And it's every Thursday night, and we invite the young people. And we pay for a keg of beer, which that is something about getting them there at the parish. And they have a beer, Milwaukee is the home of the brewers, Coors, right? And so they have a beer for those that don't drink. We have non-alcoholic drinks available, and we bring in different speakers. We did a whole series on relationships. We did a whole series of anxiety. We're building community with people who are suspicious of us. This process of family of parishes is built on the trust that you have between each other as parishes and the relationships that you're developing in your community. And you have to be honest, some people do not trust the church, right? And you can only go as fast in a relationship as someone is willing to trust you. So if I could offer, in this next session, we're going to talk about some ways to build trust. But I want to be careful in saying we have this over there and we have that over there. There's a reason why there's so many priests, missionaries, religious that went out all over the world from Ireland. There's something about us. People love an Irish accent. They love the warmth of sitting around a fire chatting. And some of that is romanticised. But there's a reason for it. We do relationships, we do community really well. The family of parishes approach that's here has to look like what you would do. And some of you might be like, that Theology on Tap thing is a great idea. I wonder, could we try that? One of our parishes said, that's not for us. Our young people are all eating sushi. We're going to do a spirituality and sushi night. It's been running for 10 years in the parish that's next to us. And that's what their family of parishes do. And I've been part of those nights. Creative, unique opportunities. But we're not just getting together to eat sushi. We're getting together to talk about what's going on in our lives through the lens of faith. And we have to be creative about that. And we have to be invitational. There was some great conversation here, and I know we only captured a snapshot of that, but I did want to respond. I actually said to the group up here, that woman that said about we need an approach here. We need to move forward with this. We need to have more information. We need to talk about the how. I said, I need to hire that woman. She's brilliant. Right, because we're all thinking it. There's great vision and energy here. So let's keep going, because I need to stay on time so that you can talk in the next session. So I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to spark some new ideas. And Tom has very wisely given me a mic so I can move around. Because I am a mover, actually, so it's hard for me to stay in one place there. That's better. Thanks a million. I want to move into this next session with looking at a way forward with us. The metaphor, and if you have not read Bishop Fintan Gavin's pastoral letter, I'd invite you to pick up a copy and take it with you. He uses the metaphor of going into the deep. Now, I remember when my father was teaching me to swim, he did not throw me in at the deep end. He brought me into the shallow end of the pool. I did lifeguarding for years, the whole lifeguarding competitions. And we always started with children or those with special needs, bringing them into the shallow end. For some people, Mass might be a deep end experience. So I want you to think about what are those shallow end experiences that you can bring people in. Not shallow in that they're trite or superficial, but there are ways for you to build community, because we do need to move into the deep as a church. I also want to say, I think it's very important that you do have your say. And I know Bishop Fintan is here listening intently. He wants to hear what you're saying. He's talked to me many times about this. We've had many conversations over the last few months with many different people from the diocese. People, ordinary, like me, people who want to do something different. We're all listening together. Nobody has this all figured out. We're walking into it now. We have ideas, parishes 7 years out, 10 years out, we've lots of resources. But this is a uniquely Diocese of Cork and Ross initiative. And so your bishop is here and he is listening and very present to the conversation. So, a way forward, I want to just step into this image for a moment here. When I think about family of parishes, we start first with family. We start first because we're God's family. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. When something tragic happens in our communities, the Irish turn out en masse to support each other. That is there. That is still there. We cannot lose that. We cannot become commercialized in our approach. We have a deep and rich faith life. When I bring Americans home to Ireland on pilgrimages, I often take them to the Holy Wells. Have you noticed how Bridget, in particular, St. Bridget, has been touching a nerve with young people? Right? There's a deep richness there, and there is a hunger for meaning. Now, I will tell you, young people are the most spiritually curious generation today, since their great-grandparents' generation or their grandparents. Now, what do I mean by that? Gen Z, or the Alpha, the newest generation, they're still figuring out how to talk to them. My son is kind of starting to get into that generation. He's 14. They are the most spiritually curious generation today. All the research bears this out. I've read it, I analyse it in the US all the time. And it's not just US, it's across the Western world. We lost something because of all the scandals that happened. We started pulling back, afraid to talk about faith. We started saying, no, faith is private. Okay, faith is personal. It's not meant to be kept private. But out of a sense of fear, not wanting to hurt or be judgmental or any of those things, we pulled back, and young people are left scrambling to find meaning. They're the most highly anxious and depressed generation ever. They are looking for meaning. They are looking for a way forward. They are looking for something. When I bring Americans over here back to Ireland, they can't get over the depth that we have, our holy wells, our sacred places, Croagh Patrick. Faith is still ingrained in the fabric of life in one way. And in another way, we've cast it off. It's for us to reclaim what is good and what is healthy for future generations. We can't go back. One of my big things is avoid that mentality of going back and romanticizing a period of time. Oh, if only we would go back and remember the day. We're not there anymore. Life has moved on. So I want to start with this image here. It's from St. Nicholas Cathedral in Galway. It's called the Window of the Holy Family. This is a uniquely Irish Holy Family. Now, when I show this to groups all over the world, there's a great familiarity with this. First of all, where's Jesus? Here he is, and look, he has red hair because he's Irish. And look in his hand, he has a cup of tea. And there is the Blessed Mother sitting beside him, knitting. And Joseph is in the back, and he's working on a piece of wood. It's an ordinary, extraordinary image of the Holy Family. A family is holy not because Not because it's doing amazing things, but because God is present in the Holy Family. God is present in every family. The other thing I would say is nobody is lost to God, no matter where they are on their journey. I take great comfort in that. God knows exactly where people are. They might not be coming to Mass, or they may say they're rejecting God. But my brother would be the same. But when I went home this time, he goes to me, "Can I talk to you about the Blessed Mother?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you want to know about her?" "We need to talk about the Immaculate Conception," he said. So he still engages with me all the time. And I said to him, "Do you pray?" He says, "I surely do every single night." We can never presume that just because somebody isn't coming to Mass that they don't have a faith life in place where they're starting to think and be curious. Now, it's interesting, when I was in Scotland doing a presentation there for them, they were like, "We see what the Blessed Mother has. That's not knitting needles. There she is playing the bagpipes." This is where we start. We start with families. We do families well. We need to look at our family. And you know, it was interesting when Eilish invited you to move, the sense of horror on some of your faces. I was just getting comfortable. I have to move. But then when you got into your families and parishes, we almost couldn't get you out of them, right? You ask people if they're ready to change. I often say, if you want to know how flexible Catholics are, ask them if they sit in the same pew every week. And they do. We don't like change. Change is hard. We're not sure what change means. But we know we have to. So let's move into this a little bit. The other thing is, this is not a meeting today. This is a gathering. It's a mehel. Now, a mehel is always came out of the Cork context. The mehel was the gathering. We always brought people together around a mehel for harvest if the weather was bad. I actually injected into my own little block, they call them in America, my own little neighbourhood, a sense of mehel. Americans live in their houses and they don't chat away to their neighbours. And I said to my husband, I don't feel good not knowing who I'm living beside. And so I go down with muffins and I'd knock on the door. "Hello, I just moved in. I'm from Ireland. I'd love to invite you over." And they're like, "Thanks. You mean you made these muffins for us? What do you want? Are you like a Mormon knocking on the door of the church or something?" And it's interesting. I've been there 15 years. We put a new roof on our house, and it was the men in the neighbourhood who put our roof on. But we also put their roofs on. We help each other out. We have a mehel community in the middle of our little tiny community on the shores of Lake Michigan. And we talk about that. We have mehel around our little bonfires. We take care of each other. Irish people are good at mehel. I would like to see you as parishes, as families of parishes, really recover this sense of mehel, of gathering around real needs. You know, what are people really struggling with today? One of our parishes has what they call a mindfulness group, but it's really Christian meditation for highly anxious teenagers. And they come and they sit and we teach them to pray and to tap into what's going on really inside of them and to connect it with God. There's loads of opportunities for us today, but it's not dependent on someone else, and it's not dependent on Father, and it's not dependent on a professional or the person who's at the back. It's dependent on you and I to say, "I'm going to start something." We had no youth group at our parish, but now we do, because my husband and I, we started something together. You know, we have to look at what not is, but what we're called to do. Now, I want to share a story with you, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning for those that are more sensitive or whose life has been impacted by this issue. I'm going to talk about the topic of suicide. And it's a hard one. And it has nipped at the fabric of our communities everywhere in the world, in America for sure, but also here. So I was offered a job in a boarding school in America. And it was a non-denominational, scientifically founded boarding school. No time for faith, please don't talk about that. And during my interview, the headmaster said, "I noticed that you spent a lot of time in Catholic schools and colleges and all of that." He said, "You know, we'll have none of that around here," he said. Because America is a highly secularized society, which means, you know, there's 30,000 Protestant denominations in the US, 30,000. So you can't say anything. He said, "Do you think you'll be able to be a school counsellor without referencing your faith?" And I really wanted that job, and I said yes. And I heard, almost like Peter, the cock crowing, because I wasn't sure that I could actually talk to young people about the real deep questions in life without referencing faith in some way. Because we're very good at talking about mental health and emotional health and physical health, but we have to talk about spiritual health, because it is the core of what knits all of the other pieces together. So I was in my office, which is between the boys' dorm and the girls' dorm at the school. School counsellor has to have an office. And I was there only a couple of months. And I put up like an image of Glendalough, had a little St. Bridget on my desk, had a little St. Patrick, little stained glass, and the principal came in and said, "You can't have any of that up. Remember we talked to you about this?" And I said, "Okay." And then one day, this jar of mustard seeds was left on my desk, kind of a strange thing, with a little note that said, "Be the mustard seed here." Nobody, I didn't know who it was anonymous. I thought to myself, what does that mean to be the mustard seed? And of course, the mustard seed in the Bible is the tiniest seed from which the great, mighty oak of faith comes. I said, someone is trying to communicate something to me. So, got this, went about life, sitting in my office one evening, and a young man walks in and he passes out in front of me. We brought him into the sick bay, and when we revived him, we noticed that he had some marks around his neck. This young man had tried to hang himself that day because he was being bullied. And the headmaster and the school administration, they brought the entire teaching body, community together, and I was sitting in the room, and you know, we had a doctor on site because it was a boarding school. He was talking about, you know, we've got to care for him, got to take care of the wounds. Somebody else was talking about, well, you know, he's on a little bit of anti-anxiety medication, maybe we got the dose wrong. The dean of students was the enforcer of discipline, and he was talking about reviewing the security cameras. It's like a totally different world. And we're going to find out who's bullying him and what happened and all of this. And I remember sitting in that room thinking to myself, these are all great things, and we need to figure them out. But what Nick really needs somebody to talk to him about is underneath all of that, which is his life has meaning. He is a young person who has value. He is loved. And we have to get underneath that. So his mother came to me and said, I can tell you're a person of faith. And I had a medal on, and that's how she knew. And she said, can you talk to my son about some kind of faith? We're Lutheran, she said, but can you talk to him? And I said, no, I can't. I cannot talk to your child about any of that. But if I step 2 steps off the campus, by chance with him on a walk, we can talk about faith. And that's what we did. And so I started talking and walking with Nick, and I gave him a prayer card, the Serenity Prayer. Lord, grant me the courage to accept. Right? You know that prayer? Yesterday in West Cork, they were on it like a hot potato. They repeated the whole thing, and the wisdom to know the difference. We know that prayer. And I gave it to him, but I gave Nick this prayer card with this image on the front and that prayer on the back. And I want you to look at this image. It's a bit grainy. I'm going to step in front of it, so I apologise, but just to give those on this side where I've been standing a little opportunity to look at this image. Okay. It's from the 1430s, from an Italian artist. This image is called Christ's Descent into Hell. Christ's descent into hell. And Nick said to me, I get the Serenity Prayer and I have to accept myself, because Nick was very different. He was artistic and he was creative, and he was being bullied by the boys in the school because he didn't want to go out and play American football or rugby. He wanted to draw and think. And I remember thinking to myself, I have to say something. I have to connect what's happening in his life, his story, with the big story, the gospel story, the ultimate story of Christianity, but I have to do it in a way that I don't scare him. And so I said to him, Nick, I gave you this prayer card because there is no hell in your life where you can walk, where Christ is not with you and has walked before you. Every one of us go through times when it feels like we're living in hell. But Christ is there with you, Nick. He burst into tears and I put my 2 arms around him. 4 years later, he invited me to his graduation from college. And he bravely shared about this time in his life where he almost ended it all, and here he was on his graduation day. And from his back pocket, he took out that prayer card I had given him all those years ago. He carried it every single day. I had no idea that the little tiny mustard seed that I had planted with him would blossom in that moment. And I always say there's 2 miracles in this story. The first one is the dean of students, who was all about discipline and reviewing cameras and kicking out students from school and all of that. I've been married to him for 15 years. I will tell you, when I met him, he wasn't practicing his faith. He was like, I can talk to God wherever I want. I can talk to him in my car. I can talk to him out on my walk. I said, you're right, but if you're going to be dating this little Irish one, you can talk to him in church with me. That was our first miracle. The second miracle is when Nick passed out, he had an image of a lady. An image of a lady holding him. It was Our Lady of Grace, actually. Our Lady of Grace. Nick converted to being Catholic. That was his mustard seed moment. We have to be intentional about sharing our stories with people, about sharing what keeps us Catholic, what we're hopeful for, why we are here today, why we get up every day, where God is in our own lives. Our generations are counting on it. Future generations are. You know, there's a great quote that someone said, the atheist coalitions are actually counting on us to be quiet and to be silent. And I, for one, will not be. Because I believe too much in the goodness of what's happening. Yes, we have challenges. Yes, awful, terrible, tragic, undefensible things have happened at the hands of people of faith. But that is not the full story. That is not the full story. So we can't let others tell us that story. We have to be able to tell it ourselves. Now, Pope Francis has been using this image of the field hospital. Have you heard him say that? We need to be a field hospital. Some of you are nodding. Thank you. This is the quote that he puts with this. The thing the church needs most today is the ability to heal wounds and to warm the hearts of the faithful. I see the church as a field hospital after battle. It's useless to ask a seriously injured person about the level of their blood sugars or their high cholesterol. You have to heal the wounds. Then we can talk about everything else. Heal the wounds, heal the wounds. So, you're probably thinking to yourself, where do we go with this though, Julianne? I want to give you 4 potential pathways for how to think about the families of parishes as a field hospital. I call them the 4 H's. Heritage. In your family of parishes, you've holy wells, sacred sites, pilgrimage ways, beautiful churches, gorgeous communities. What is unique in your local area? What are the heritage pieces that you're drawing on? Who's your patron saint? When is their feast day? You know, there's a reason why in America they celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But you know, it's gone so commercialized now. Like I'll tell you a little quick off the script here a little bit. But St. Patrick was a real person who walked the footprint of Ireland. And yet my kids were coming home from school and you know what they were doing for St. Patrick's Day? Setting leprechaun traps. Oh, hilarious. Great, right, lovely, get them and get... But they were learning nothing about St. Patrick. And the teacher said to me, I don't know much about St. Patrick. I just hear about Ireland and its shamrocks and leprechauns. So no harm done, but I said, let's recover a sense of why we're celebrating this. So now I go in and I tell the stories of St. Patrick. And I always have Tato shipped over. And penguin bars for the kids. They love them. And little purple snacks. Anyway, we have to recover these heritages first. And then hope, which came up very much in your conversations. What does it look like to be a community of hope? For our priests who are here, how do we preach a message of hope? Of not falling apart, but being broken open. What are the needs that we need to call people to hope in? Not, as Father Bob and I talked about, optimism, but hope that sticks when times are tough. Heritage hope, healing, which we're talking about right now, and the last one is hospitality. The quality of the welcoming, the cup of tea, the ability to come together, to welcome families in. And hospitality is not just providing the tea and the good bread and all of that. It's being hospitable and open to new life. And I do see that coming with some of the traditions coming in with the Polish, with the Easter baskets and things like that. That's new life. We should be looking at ways to build that up. So I want to step into the healing piece just for a minute because it's perhaps the most difficult. And I invite you to look at this video. It's called The Empathy Connection. The Empathy Connection, and it's from Cleveland Clinic. And again, Pope Francis is giving us this image of the field hospital. And I have a little video here that kind of invites us to consider what our family of parishes could be in this model. pretty profound, isn't it? This is the field hospital today. You know, I gave you the basics of renewal. Feels a bit weird quoting myself here. Is that hope, healing, and hospitality. But just because we are a people of, I always say the Irish are people of history and mystery, our heritage is that fourth key. It's a potential pathway forward. I was telling Eilish last night, I actually buried, it's something you never think you have to do as a parent, I buried my second child. And our family of parishes recognise that 1 in 4 women have lost, had a miscarriage, a stillborn, or buried a child. And I took that pain away for a long time, and I got a call from one of the women at the parish, and she said, Julianne, we know you lost a child. Now, they're a different family of parishes. They'd be, say, 20 miles away. She said, but we are having an infant loss and life remembrance service. Would you like the name of your child to be written into our special book, and can we remember your child in prayer? And I came with my husband to that, grieving, and seeing my child's name, Christopher Joseph, on that page. Hope, healing, and I was received and I was welcomed in. And it was my journey toward healing was through a family of parishes that reached out and said, we're going to do this special mass to recognise those who've lost a child. We can do these things. You know, we think that we can't do much, but I think about our dear friend Bishop David O'Connell, life that touched so many people. That's, by the way, where I got hope, healing, and hospitality from, was him. Because I say, how do you connect with so many people? And he said, I just love people. I call them to hope. And at his funeral, there were Buddhists, Muslim, Sikhs, every colour represented. There were former prostitutes sitting beside nuns, because he used to go out to the homes where they were and talk to them about how their bodies had dignity after being used on the streets. A Cork man. His name was known. We passed the city of Los Angeles, who wouldn't be exactly welcoming to Catholic faith, put up 36 billboards on the highways in his memory. There's something great about this people here. And so, you know, I'll tell you a little bit about that another time, but I really want to get to this moment here. We all have our own things. That's what I call this thing, the thing. I got this in Ireland years ago. I've no idea what it is. It's like a little ceramic. Somebody said it's a bird feeder. It's not. It's got holes in it. It's made out of ceramic, so a good gust of wind is going to crack it. I was given this after my mother passed away. I could barely look at it because it reminded me of her. But one day I decided, you know, this thing was kind of a roadblock for me in moving forward. And I put a picture of it on my Facebook page, and I said to people, what is this thing anyway? And someone said, I know exactly what that is. That's the unending circle of the love you had with your mother. Someone said, that's beautiful, but this is what I see. I see this because there's a hole right there, and that's the hole that's left in your heart when you're grieving someone. And then someone else says, oh, that's lovely, but this is God's love. It goes round and round for us. Every one of us has a thing that prevents us from moving forward. I'm too old for this malarkey. I'm done with it. Jeremiah in the Bible said he was too young. Moses, I'm not a speaker. When we're called into mission, mission is, Pope Francis says, mission is passion for God and God's people. That's it. When you feel that spark and that fire of new life coming, there's going to be something that prevents you from going, I'm going to jump, I'm going to take a leap of faith. But God doesn't ask for our ability. He asks for our availability, which is to say, I'll do something. I'm not even sure what it is, but I can do something. So, in order for us to move into the deep on this day of Pentecost, recognize this image, anyone? It's in somebody's families of parishes here, and they're like, oh, there we are. It's in the Church of the Descent of the Holy Spirit. I walked into it the other day. This Pentecost weekend, the disciples were all locked up in the upper room, and they were afraid. They didn't know what to do, and the Holy Spirit came down and filled their hearts and sent them out on mission. That's what today is all about. My prayer, my hope, my dream. And it was Bishop Dave's too. was for the Diocese of Cork and Ross to come alive with fire and not fear. So, in your families and parishes, we're going to give you time for discussion. And I really want you to think about what strengths that you have as a parish and a family of parishes. And then these are the tough questions here. What do we need to stop doing in order to become a family of parishes? What do we need to keep doing because you're doing some really good things? And then what do we need to start doing? And now I'm going to pass it over to Eilish because I do believe that there might be homework involved. It's better that you hear that from her rather than me. But I want to thank you for listening to me in this last session. You've just been a fabulous audience, so thanks a million.
Julia.